We have 22 people. We have a big group here at our place right now. So Haley's up with the boys, with our children. She's occupied. So it's just me tonight, I'm sorry. And and when it's just me, I don't like singing by myself or singing to a computer by myself in such a way. So we're not going to do any songs tonight. No Haley, just me. We've been doing these monthly calls, and it's just nice to have some accountability, some people showing up. So I have to come onto the computer and see who's there and see what we are going to talk about. But just a reminder for anyone who's new, it's just an opportunity for all of us just to gather in presence and just return to these special places in which you've probably met us or been with us and that you know us, and to be and return to that place of presence that you know inside of yourself. That's awoken here, or this that you know in your life. It's very, very important. To me, it's kind of like my life's work in a way. Not to preach these things, but to keep talking about what is meaningful to us, because it's so easy to get lost and caught up. The big group that we have here today, they're from Ohio, a big group from Ohio, and the couple leading the retreat, they first did a yoga teacher training with me probably like 7 or 8 years ago, and today we had a big chanting concert. Just finished a couple of hours ago, and they came up to me just before dinner, and they were in tears, and they said, "Thank you so much. It's been a really hard year, and we haven't been singing. We haven't been dancing as much as we want to." And she said of her husband that he hasn't been singing, and today he sang his whole heart out, and they both just had tears running down their face. It was very, very beautiful. It's like that. Sometimes we want to complicate life, and sometimes life is very, very complicated. But spirituality in its essence should be very, very simple. To recognize what is right here with us, to recognize what we are in every given moment, because the world it just keeps whirling and whirling round and around and around. And to me, the spiritual path, it's not whirling; it's sitting in the center. But we have to have good old-fashioned reminders and to come together and do it together, so that we can keep watering the seeds in the garden of what is peaceful and nourishing and joyful in all of us. So to begin, we will just take a moment to be with the moment, take a moment to come to your own presence. And just take a moment to let the mind and the body just be exactly what it is. Part of the path is recognition. See if you can just recognize what is here. Recognizing what is here, it doesn't mean thinking about it or having a conversation with yourself. It's just a simple noticing. One thing we notice when we stop is that everything slows down. The thing about noticing or recognition is it's not finding anything new to notice, it's not finding anything new to add. When it comes to meditation practice and spiritual practice, we can start filling up our bag so much that we miss the space of the bag, if you know what I mean. So the real practice of meditation is just emptying the bag. It's just being with what is already there. So recognition, it doesn't need any new technique or practice. Just to be with yourself, just to listen, just to find steadiness, stability. When I say we're going to have a moment of presence like this, there's probably two directions that you can take. One is that you soften and you relax and you deepen and steepen yourself, steep yourself into that place. The other place is that you say, well, okay, we're going to do this thing. When's it going to end? He didn't tell me. And there's anticipation. There's a subtle pull inside, wondering what comes next or where to go, or a subtle whirling of the mind. We'll just be here for a few more minutes, but I want to point out any anticipation, any of this subtle movement in the body or the mind. See if you can step back into yourself, into the place that can be aware of it. You don't have to stop the whirling. You can just watch it. You can let it slow of its own accord. When I was younger, I used to try to meditate. I used to force something to happen. You can't really force something to happen, but I was waiting. I thought meditation was about having a vision or having some big, profound experience. When I was a teenager, I was really into all sorts of music, but for a long period, rock music, like hard rock, like, and Tool. I know there are a lot of Tool fans out there. And when I would try to meditate, I would sit, and one of the lines in the song is prying open my third eye, prying it open, like, "Urgh." And I'd sit and I'd be try and concentrate, and I'd try to pry this thing open because I thought that there was some vision to be had. Now that lyric just serves as a reminder of just to laugh at myself. I want to tell you two things, two stories, perhaps, to give some context for what I want to say next. Following that is that when I was very young, I had a lot of really deep, profound spiritual experiences that that were very hard, very difficult. Many, but the one that comes to mind is when I was about 16 and had this experience. I'll try to make the long story short, but in my experience, everything left. Because when you're trying to do something in meditation, trying to force something, you can put yourself in some precarious places, right? So long story short, I had this experience and I completely, probably from a psychological point of view, it's a type of psychosis maybe, but I had no idea. I had amnesia. It wasn't just amnesia, I went into a complete place of not knowing anything. I looked at my hands. I wasn't even bewildered because I had no concept to grasp of what this was. I'd never seen it before. I didn't know what I was. I didn't have a name, I didn't have an identity, I didn't have any words. Everything fell away. And it took me a few days to kind of come back from that. When my ego started to come back from that, there was fear. Fear because to be in a social situation or to live in a body, you need to know your name. You need to know what these are. You need to know what you're doing and where you're going. You have all of these pressures to fulfill. And when everything falls away, it's very unnerving. It's very destabilizing. It can be very shaky. It can be very scary if we don't have proper guidance, if we're not in proper establishments that guide people in these places where they might find themselves in a psychological or spiritual experience. Something about that experience really stays with me because when I lost everything and I had to succumb to the complete unknowing of everything, no knowledge of anything, no concept of anything, no word for anything, that is something that scarred me in a way, in a good way, perhaps. It might not have been the best at that age, but what it did was it gave me, what stayed with me is what left. Something left. There was not anything to grasp onto and something ungrasped. And it gave me a relationship to not knowing in a way that I couldn't read about in a book, perhaps. Some years later, I have another memory in my teenage years, very angsty. And my mother lived near the beach, near the ocean. And I would go down to the ocean. I would do it often, like a few times a week. And I'd go and I'd sit. And in Australia, at this part of the world, we have these big, long, open stretches of beaches with really no one around a lot of the time. It's really magnificent. And I'd go and I'd sit on the sand dunes in the afternoon. And I'd put all of the town, all of civilization, all of the world, all of the noise, it was all behind me, and in front of me was just ocean. And I would sit, and I wouldn't meditate, but I would sit and I'd let everything behind me go, and I'd go back into that place of not knowing anything, the place of complete unknown. And I would look out at the ocean and recreate that experience. I'd look out at the ocean and say, I have no idea what it is. I'd look at the wave, I wouldn't call it a wave. I'll look at the clouds, I wouldn't call them clouds. I would just look with looking with no words, with no concepts, with no meaning at all. And that was something that gave me peace. That was one of my ways to settle my teenage angst and my my war with the world and with society, you know, with all these things. And the reason I just thought of this today, and the reason why I wanted to share it, is because that's actually, to me, a wonderful way to approach meditation. If we sit down to meditate, sometimes we call it meditation, say, okay, I'm going to do this practice, I'm going to do it for this many minutes, and then I do here, and then I look there, and then I count this mantra, then I do this. And the techniques and the things like this, that sometimes they overwhelm us. It's hard to drop in to get there. And so what happens if we sit down and we don't call it meditation, and we just sit and we forget everything we knew? Whatever's in front of you, if it's a wall, you don't know what a wall is. You say, wow, look. If there's a tree, you say, ah, wow. You just say, wow. You sit without any concept or idea of the practice of sitting. Because many of us here, these calls started from a meditation course I did. So some of you maybe haven't taken that, but we talk a bit about meditation here and there. And if you sit down without the idea of meditation, without the word meditation, without any of the practice, then what is that? Just try it out now. Sit and look as if you've never looked before, as if you've never been in a body before. It's like pure innocence. You're not trying to do anything, you're not trying to go anywhere, you're not trying to make anything happen. It's quite beautiful. I find that some people that I do this with, they have been meditating for a long time and they say, wow, I didn't know I could get there that quick. And so there's entering into this unknowing, because it's very important to start to understand how our conceptual mind creates a sort of mirage of reality where we call things things. I've been a long-term student of Zen, and I one of the things that I love to do is come up with Zen koans and Zen concepts. And this one, it's not one of the nicer ones that I have, but for some reason it's I want to share it now. It says a wooden table without legs is just wood on the ground. And what that does for me, in my mind, it says that if you don't call a thing, it's not a thing anymore. It's the whole thing. If I stop calling things things, they start to become what they are, and they start to reveal themselves to me. Then we're entering into like a relationship, and this is where the real presence is found. Not in our concepts about presence, but in the real simplicity of just being simple. The fun thing about this type of meditation is that you sit without any idea, and if an idea comes into your mind, you look at it just the same way. You say, wow, what is that? And as you look at it from that place, it doesn't have any hold on you. But when we approach meditation or spiritual practice from conceptual places, then we keep toying and circling with concepts. And then an idea comes. Now you're running with ideas. But if you don't know about ideas, you just look. It's a kind of a clear seeing. It's like a clear mirror that just reflects. It's transparent. And the reason I'm sharing this, and it comes to my attention that when it comes to spiritual teachings, mystical paths and traditions, contemplative aspects, quite often people are saying the same things over and over again, around and around and around. And it's not like giving ourselves more information. It's not like filling up that bag to have more things in our tool belt. It's just to keep going around the same thing. until it really, really lands. Until we really look at the mind free of thought, and we have a clear seeing of the world, until we can really relax into our body and feel safe in it, and just get a taste of peace. If you have a taste of peace, you say, wow. And the reason this is on my mind today is because I see a lot of spiritual seekers in my work, and a lot of people on different paths. And I see how sometimes we can be talking about the same things. A lot of people, they hear the words, they listen to the words, and we agree. But they are agreeing with concepts. And it's a shame to be hearing the words but not seeing the place that they point to. It's a really important thing, which is why I started the meditation course and things like this, is so we could go back to foundations, so that people could really, really look clearly and look at what is looking. Because if we always just look with thoughts all day, at the end of the day, we're just left with more thoughts. We haven't really come alive. And so I see a lot of people on spiritual paths, and the path, it never ends. And if we're always trying to get somewhere, we miss the beauty of the very path itself. It's a very mysterious thing. It's that unknowing place again. Because the path, not only does it never end, it doesn't move. But we kind of get wrapped up in a trajectory of a mind that is bound by time. And so it constantly feels an impulse going forward, going somewhere. And there are a lot of beautiful places we can go on the path in our life with these impulses going forward. Here, the teaching is just to take these moments to stop that impulse. Because if we stop that impulse and we see things clearly, we just rest. What flowers there? What is flowering? Something very, very beautiful. One of the mantras we sung today, a classic Buddhist mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. When we sing these sorts of things, we have to contemplate them. In the mantra, it just says, a jewel in the lotus, basically. And I said today, and I'll say it again because it struck me in a different way. It's the Lotus Sutra of the Buddha, which there are many, many, many verses and chapters, but a part of it is one of the catches in it is this analogy of how the lotus grows through mud and grime and muck. And when it blossoms, it's unstained. It doesn't have any of the mud on it. If you think of like a beautiful pink lotus or a blue lotus, whatever color lotus you like, coming out of a murky water, and then when it blossoms, it's not stained by the murkiness, it's not stained by the mud. Perhaps we've heard this before, but if you really see that image, it's very, very beautiful. What that image is pointing to is that there is something in us that is unstained by lifetimes of world whirling around and around and around. And what that is pointing to is that there's something that has a potential and a seed to blossom within all of us that is so pure that it's without any concepts about purity. It's untouched, it's unstained, it's just radiant. And then if we really think that if we really consider this potential in each of us, that there is a blossoming flower inside of us, like this light that wants to peer through in the darkness of space, in the darkness of whatever the world is doing, in the darkness of all of this suffering, that there's a flower that has the potential to blossom inside of our heart and inside of our mind. What is that potential and where does that come from? It's not about more. It's not about having all the information and reading the books. It's not about going somewhere. It's about saying, wow, there's something in my mind that has the power to recognize itself. There is something in me that has the power to recognize its own essence, And if it's recognizing its own essence, isn't that essence the very essence of all things? If you trace your essence back far enough, isn't that the essence with a capital E? If you look at your presence deeply enough, you become deeply present, and you let go of all your concepts, all your ideation, isn't that the presence that we're all sharing? Isn't that the presence of the light of the stars? The presence of the moon reflecting the sun? The presence of the waves lapping the shore? And when I follow this contemplation, it's that the sun, the moon, the stars, the mountains, the trees, everything, all of nature, it is in devotion to this presence. It's a poetic way to put it. But for me, what a spiritual path means, it's not that it's being eccentric or different or choosing something that is different than the world. It's seeing deeply the essence of the world and seeing deeply that every single one of us will eventually have to bow down before whatever that is. That's a very humbling thing. And so I think the mystics and contemplatives, the saints, the sages, the masters of all the ages, they had wonderful things to say, but a big part of it was basically that sooner or later you're going to have to come face to face with whatever it is you are. And if you keep running the other way, you're going to be far away from it. And it's going to be hard to catch up. If you keep ignoring it, one day it's going to knock so loudly and you won't have a chance to open the door. There's this, with this way that we can sometimes mistake it, it's because our sense of self, our, like, we call it a selfing mechanism, a process, or sometimes called the ego, things like this. It's because that tries to grasp it. No. When the sense of self tries to grasp this big presence and say, I get it, I understand it, I understand this essence, I'm doing meditation. It's just this. It's still an idea, still a concept. But when this finally surrenders to this bigger thing, it can finally relax. But within what I teach in spiritual teachings, it's important to say that it's not psychology, it's not therapy. No? And perhaps there's a lot of overlap, and a lot of people who work in the middle ground of these things, of science and neuroscience and philosophy. To me, spirituality, it's its own category. And if we think that we come to spirituality for therapy, or we come to spirituality to to analyze in different ways, we can be surprised. I'm not disregarding one or the other. I'm saying that we need to make clear distinctions. Jung says that we need to individuate first, that a healthy ego is very, very important for the spiritual journey. If we haven't individuated first and started to kind of digest and look at and see clearly and integrate the shadows of our psyche, then if we start to have these spiritual openings, we can be kind of fragmented. It can lean towards very dangerous sorts of egocentrism and all sorts of things. I think it's very, very important to take that into consideration, the individuation of oneself, because I see a lot of people on a spiritual path as well who are looking just straight at that light, but they've forgotten their humanity. They've forgotten their own self, their own small self. It's very beautiful to have a small self. very beautiful to, you know, have work to do in this life, to buy the groceries, to make the food, to feed each other, to raise kids, to do all of these things. So there are always matters that we need to take care of. I find something fascinating. Another person who's in the crossroads like that, Ken Wilber, he said that the order is actually wake up, grow up, clean up, show up. Maybe I said this before. What I think is interesting there is that he says wake up first. He doesn't say individuate and then wake up. And I think it's important to say that sometimes we don't have an opportunity to decide when the waking up happens. Sometimes we don't have an opportunity to decide if realization is there taking root. And so the individuation or the growing up stage sometimes is an afterthought. How to integrate our mind, how to integrate our life, how to get on with our life, how to keep working, how to keep showing up, and how to keep cleaning up our own psyche, the things that come in there, our relationships, our family, the way we relate to the world, the way we relate to others. And I think there's a wisdom in that, to say that if we were to say that one must individuate before they partake a spiritual journey or have an awakening experience, it wouldn't be the whole picture. So awakening happens for many people in all sorts of ways, and we can be stunted in that in all sorts of ways, culturally, with our own ideas, with our own concepts. Which is why it's important to me in any spiritual or religious path is that what comes first in the seat is humility. That's why we say if you don't come with humility, you'll be humbled along the way. Because if you really come to the root of that thing, it's not really about you anymore. And if you really come to something that's not really about you anymore, it can be disheartening for the ego. The ego doesn't like it, but it's very liberating to everything else. And this is why in many of those paths there's practices of service and devotion and worship, because we wake up, we find out something, but it's not the end of the story. We have to grow up, we have to integrate, we have to individuate, we have to clean up, and we have to keep cleaning up our being, to be a being in this world. And that's how we show up. You know? Sometimes when the knock comes at the door, you don't have enough time to open it. No? Humility, simplicity, and the ability to recognize that the important thing is recognition itself. Because that is the presence. Just this clear recognition. And if we do that in this place with no ideas, with no concepts, complete unknown, what is that? Maybe there's fear because we aren't used to not knowing. Maybe there's fear because we're not used to not controlling. To give up control is a huge threat to our small-minded self. He wants to have a tantrum and kick and get its way. But to have things simple recognition right in front of us, no idea, no concept. It could also be pure innocence, it could also be a relief, it could also be peace. Because when we look for peace in things, in the world, it's a never-ending search. I see a lot of people on the spiritual path as well, and the concepts are wild sometimes. We can all have different hobbies and different interests and different opinions, but I see some people, it's about everything else other than what is here now. It's about planets, about cards, it's about crystals, it's about divine feminine, divine masculine, and this lineage and this ancestry, and over here and there, and in the ground, and in this medicine and that medicine, and everywhere. And they're all good places to look. They're all good hobbies to have. Wonderful people. But if we're really humbled into this thing, and we just recognize what's here, then the meditation or the spiritual practice is not forcing something to happen. It's relaxing into what is happening. And in that sense, it's so ordinary. That's why I say, if you sit and look at a wall and you say, what is a wall? And you don't come up with an answer, you just say, wow. That's how ordinary it can be, just a white wall. I did my Zen training at one of the monasteries I lived in. It was, that's how they practice meditation. Each person would sit in front of a wall. And it's a very classic practice. But I thought it was incredible. Sitting in front of a white wall. All you're looking at all day is just the wall. And you don't close your eyes. Eyes opened, wall in front of you. Wow. Very challenging. Very, very beautiful. Well, you don't need anything special. You don't need to pry open your third eye to see what's in front of you. And so coming to peace with the ordinary affairs in our life is a huge, huge, huge thing that I never get tired of echoing. Because if we want happiness, and if our happiness is found in something, like we need this thing to be happy, then we need another thing to be happy. If our happiness relies on things outside of us, the search is endless. It doesn't end. It goes from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, until we're completely exhausted and we haven't really found happiness. But the people that I know who are truly happy, they find happiness with nothing. They don't need anything to be happy. It's not that something's going to make them happy. If something's going to make you happy, it leads to 1,000 other things that don't end. If you're happy with nothing, if nothing makes you happy, you don't need 1,000 more things. You don't need anything. So one is a path of multiplication that is endless and exhausts you. The other is a path of immediacy. And that's the real happiness, because happiness that depends on other things, it doesn't stand its own ground, it doesn't stay with you. But if you find this happiness that doesn't stand on anything, it doesn't lean on anything, that swells up from in you like a spring, then you don't need to go anywhere to look for it. You don't need anything more to find it. And it's simple. It's simplicity. Yeah. But it begins with the ability to be able to sit with ourselves without distractions. Just to let the mind rest. And look at the mind just like you would a white wall in front of you. And then to get a taste of what it's like to have a mind free of thoughts and doubts, free of words, free of stories. Because it's going all the time. But if you recognize that thing, those things keep going. But what recognizes, and the recognition itself, is free of them. And I believe that's one of the big factors of awakening in people, is that they are, these things, these processes, they haven't stopped, they haven't given up. In some, perhaps they have, but they keep going. But we're not tied to them, we're not roped in, we're not clinging or attached or identified with them anymore. And that's a really, really fascinating thing, to be at peace with your own mind. Because a lot of people are not at peace with their own mind. And so my other Zen koan for tonight is, the mark of awakening is the end of seeking. Because the mark of awakening is the end of seeking. So when we say I see a lot of spiritual seekers, and sometimes we identify ourselves with this. Those of you who are, whichever paths you know me from, I walk several paths, right? But spiritual seekers, this is such an interesting term, and I've always wrestled with it, because that always puts my spirituality out in front of me somewhere else. It always puts my heart, my essence, my presence somewhere else. And I'm seeking truth. And if I'm seeking truth, then it's at a distance from me. But if I really know truth, I know that there is no distance to it. There's nowhere that I could go to reach it. And so I collapse the separation. And if we are always spiritual seekers, then will we ever be spiritual finders? And just like with that unknown, I say it a lot, the word spiritual or spirituality, it's just lack of better terms. It just means whatever it is that is at the essence of right here, whatever it is at the essence of our life, that stands before our life, before our death. Whatever is really, really, really the biggest thing and the smallest thing we can conceive of at once. That the universe is just a speck of dust in its eye. When I talk about the spiritual path, I'm talking about the path of God, the path of truth, whichever words you want to frame it as. But if we are spiritual seekers, then when are we finders? And so if we do what we just did tonight, we sit with that idea, with that concept. That's what I call holy presence. That's what I call a path with peace, a path with happiness, not a path to peace, not a path to happiness. So we have to resolve our own mind. But you have to see always where the teachings point us. And I always find it funny because as a spiritual teacher, I talk, and my words are the vessel for the teaching. But for me, it's not so much about the words. The words are just a vehicle. There's something else there, and that something else is, I'm always trying to give words to it, and so I never shut up. But I notice that sometimes we can hear the words and we can miss the place they're pointing to. There's a thing I read in an anthropological study once. I believe there's a term for it, but it's something that came up a lot in early anthropology in 1940s or 50s, around this time when they were starting to study indigenous cultures. And what they found, it took them a long time to find it because it wasn't readily seen. What they found later on, and they started finding it, and then it became its own part of studying anthropology, is our common misunderstanding, I guess I could say, where we think we understand each other because we use the same language, but because we dress similar or because we have the same interests. But the worldview or the place that it's coming from is worlds apart sometimes. So they would be in indigenous cultures talking with them, and they would say, oh yeah, so this is their cosmology, this is how it works. But they would have a Western way of viewing things. They have like a colonial imprint of the way of viewing things. And when they do that, and when they wrote their papers, it didn't represent some of those cultures and those groups and those people the way that they thought it did. And those people from those cultures and groups, they didn't think it represented them, because there's a huge gap in the worldview. It's almost like we don't live in the same world at all. And that old Zen saying, do 100 people walk across one bridge, or do 100 people walk across 100 different bridges? In our mind, from our conception, from our experiences, from the way that we view and relate the world uniquely as ourself, sometimes we are always missing each other in this common misunderstanding. And so tonight I thought there was perhaps two approaches. One is to come back to the place of not knowing anything, complete innocence. And two, to come back to the place where there is no misunderstanding. Yeah, for whatever it is worth. May you may you recognize this peace that lives inside of you. May you recognize this love that lives in your heart. May you recognize the joy that is there. May you recognize the possibility to put down whatever it is that disturbs you and just be with this moment, with whatever the world is doing, with however it's been, with hard times, with good times, with up and with down. It doesn't matter, because this presence is always the same. And we could go looking for it everywhere and miss it right inside of us. So one more minute together. It's this thing I always want to make it short and say, see you later. And then I think, wow, it's very special that we have all of these people here together. We should not just run away so quickly. Could this be enough? Yeah. So Gabrielle says her current mantra is, could this be enough? Deyenu. Said in Passover, it would have been enough. My feeling on that right now is that it is enough. And we just sit for just a minute together, just to feel the sufficiency of the moment. To feel the sufficiency of the moment, it can be challenging because it means that we have to let go of all of our attachments and our ideas of how it could be or should be. But if you can have sufficiency just for this moment together, let the moment be as it is. Put down all your ideas and thoughts about it. And ask, what is that? Not could this be enough? What is it that is here with me? What is it that has always been here with me? Could that be it? Okay, good night, my friends. Hope to see you next time.
Thank you.